Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Kristen Holmes from Whoop and Justin Roethlingshoefer from Own It. I want to introduce Kristen Holmes from Whoop, and I want her to talk about her background, and then I'll let Justin talk about him and his background. So, Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my entire life I've been in the performance space. I was a two-sport athlete at the University of Iowa. I played field hockey and basketball, so Big Ten, and then I went on to play for the U.S. national team for about 7 years. And always had a deep interest in performance science, performance education, really understanding the factors, the behaviors that really influence our capacity to really live our values with joy and energy. That's always been a huge interest of mine. And then I got into coaching, and I was at Princeton University for about 13 years, where I coached the field hockey team. And there's a lot of winning going on. We won 12 Ivy League championships in 13 years, and a national championship. So it was cool. I was able to teach a seminar through McGraw Center for Teaching and Learning, aptly named Performance Optimization. I got really into health, into technology as a coach and as a teacher, really wanting to help my students and student athletes understand how to leverage behaviors to really drive performance outcomes, and saw technology as a way to really foster that. So I was doing quite a bit of monitoring in practice, both external load, internal load, subjective load. Started building my own technology, and I raised about $250,000 in angel in funding. Hired statistical machine learning, computational biology at Princeton, and basically just started a little company where I was basically building a technology that was very similar to Whoop. And that's actually how I came to learn about Whoop, was building a very similar technology, trying to wrestle with the ground, this concept of recovery and readiness, and knowing that, at the beginning of the day, right? So you could kind of organize your behaviors accordingly. And lots of other factors as well, sleep. And so very similar. And that's kind of how I came to learn about Whoop, and met Will Ahmed. And that's, I guess, the rest is history. I've been at Whoop for 5 years.
Justin, go ahead. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so much like Kristen, have always been obsessed with human performance. It's something that propelled me as a player growing up in Canada, playing hockey, and came down, played at Massachusetts, and from there had a brief stint at the pro level. But even from the age of 16, was the guy going to sleep with electrodes on his temples and occipital lobes, and wearing this pulse oximeter at night to track sleep waves and figure out where I was when I woke up, and training with heart rate monitors and GPS monitors, and was the guy getting weird looks because these weren't cool things to do back in the early 2000s, leading up through 2011 when I retired. And from there, went and got my master's degree at the University of Louisville in exercise physiology as well as psychology, and started to understand that there was something more to performance rather than the hour that you were working, or the hour that you were training, or the hour that you were playing, but that it really was a 24-hour cycle that created the 24-hour athlete. And that recovery was actually more indicative of performance than the actual training itself. And it was at that moment that I started to really, just like Kristen said, guess and test, utilize case studies, utilize the athletes we were working with. And that was the year that we won national championships in men's basketball at Louisville, as well as went to the national championship game against UConn and lost in women's. And so something really triggered my mind at that moment. It was like, there's something more. And so continued to utilize 4 or 5 different entities to try to figure out one metric at the end of the day. And it got very convoluted, very complicated. And from there went to Miami and worked with the men's hockey program. Same thing, really got deep into HRV, what those analytics meant. Again, using GPS and recovery technology, from heart rate monitors at night to, again, tracking sleep electrodes and brain waves. And at that point, started to move into the National Hockey League. Did some work with the Washington Capitals, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then finally got the big job at with the Anaheim Ducks. And start to dive into even more epigenetic DNA testing. What does one person need more of than something else? While still understanding that recovery data drove the basis of everything. And while I was there, started to, again, being in the Valley, wrote a couple books on the topic, had the opportunity to work with a couple very large companies and their executive teams on recovery and performance, because that's what I love. I obsess about it, and started to learn that energy, positivity, productivity, efficiency all drove from sleep and recovery. And once we were able to draw those two lines of comparison and know that in every single person, we're measuring really the same thing, but based upon their individual natures, we were able to come up with a lot of great systemizations. And that's when I really fell in love with Whoop and what they were doing and how they created it. And it's now just become a staple in a part of how we work with both my NFL and NHL athletes, as well as the entrepreneurs and executives that we are now working at scale.
That's great. I'm going to switch back to Kristen because I know she has to jump off early. So Kristen, tell us about the Whoop story. If some people don't know, everything about Whoop, and it's really fascinating. So can you give us sort of the brief journey that the company took?
Yeah, our founder and CEO, Will Ahmed, who is just sensational on every level. He was a Harvard squash athlete and, was trying to, a lot like Justin and I, just trying to figure out, like, the body just didn't necessarily make sense, right? In terms of, I can do one thing one day and it doesn't necessarily predict how I feel tomorrow. And just this incongruity between kind of how he's feeling and how he was playing and never knowing, how to peak. So he's really trying to solve all these questions around human performance that, at that time no one had really wrestled with the ground. And so, he started basically reading, tons of articles, in all the journals about, how to think about this topic. He was wearing a chest strap, like literally 24/7. And he decided, he's like, I'm going to solve this. And he started Whoop. At the time it was called Bobo. He recruited, the engineer, the hardware guy, the mathematician, John Capilupo, who is just like the smartest person on this planet. So he kind of assembled this unbelievable team and started building the product. And and that's how it was born. And you can kind of read about the kind of the history in terms of the funding, but I think that's an interesting story in itself, just going from raise to raise. And we just closed our Series E recently. So
so when did it, Kristen, when did it start?
2012. That's when he formed it, and I guess he was a senior at Harvard at that time. And I joined in 2016.
And the most recent raise was how much? I thought I read it. It was big.
$100 million.
I did read that correctly. Holy cow. Yeah. That's stunning.
I know. It's great. I mean, it's going to, help us grow and continue to build a product that people love. And it's a subscription-based model. So, it's about features and delivering insights and to our members, so they understand what behaviors are most influential on their performance.
So people know what Fitbit is. People know what Apple Watch is and other. So maybe some people don't know the differences. I know I don't know the differences. Can you sort of outline briefly how it compares?
Yeah. So this is Whoop. It's and as you notice, there's no watch face, and I think that's probably the biggest difference is that it's literally just collecting data. So there's no and I would say the core differentiator is definitely around the volume of data. We're sampling at 52 hertz. So 52 times a second, we're sampling heart rate data. We're not powering down to, answer a text or send a text or answer an email or, a phone call or, surf the web. We're literally just collecting heart rate. So we basically are able to kind of take the fidelity of that of all that data, and then basically be able to run it through our algorithms across 3 pillars. We look at strain, which is a summary statistic of your cardiovascular load. We look at recovery, which is your capacity to take on load or strain. And we look at sleep. So it's really, kind of to Justin's point, it's really the essentials, right? The non-negotiables. Like if you're not thinking about these things, you're just missing a huge opportunity to really understand how your body is adapting to external stress. And I would say at the very, kind of highest level, that's really what we're doing is we're giving you the insights into how your body is adapting to all the stressors, just relationship and how you're working out or not working out, what you're eating, your hydration levels, like all of that is going to manifest in your autonomic nervous system, which is one of our core metrics. And we measure that. And we give you the HRV, heart rate variability is really the metric that helps you understand your autonomic health. And that's kind of the responsiveness, your nervous system's responsiveness to your heart's responsiveness to your autonomic nervous system is really what the measure of heart rate variability is. So yeah, that's a little.
Well, that's a word I don't know. That's a big word. So can you say
heart rate variability?
Yeah, say it one more time.
Oh my God, heart rate variability. Yeah, heart rate variability.
Well, what's the other one? Did you say?
Oh, the autonomic nervous system.
That I've never heard that word before. Those two.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's really important as it relates to recovery, and I know Justin can elucidate on this as well. But yeah, I mean, I think when we think about like if you want to understand your body and you want to know your overall, a snapshot of your overall health, mental and physical wellness, heart rate variability is the mother of all metrics. So anyone in a kind of tactical, and I think every human should have an understanding of a baseline understanding of their heart rate variability. Because when things go wrong in your life, psychologically or physiologically, it will show up in your heart rate variability. So for example, if I go out, tonight and I drink, 5 Red Bull vodkas and sleep for 2 hours, my heart rate variability, which is 114, my baseline, it will be probably in the 20s tomorrow. So it shows you without any uncertain terms exactly how your body is responding to the shit you do to it. So if I go to bed and I'm super dehydrated, I'll wake up and my heart variability will be low. If I have a massive fight with my partner, I'll wake up and I'll probably have a low heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is one of the inputs into the WHOOP recovery metric, which is user facing. It's on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 to 33 would be considered under recovered. So not adapting functionally to your environment. You'd be in the red. Yellow is 34 to 66. Green is 67 to 100. 67 to 100 means you're really primed to adapt to your environment. Okay. And, adaptability is really, it's what makes you biologically relevant, right? Like if we're not adapting to our environment in a functional way, that's when we die, right? So, there's this really important connection for people to understand that the more variable your heart is, that bestows a survival advantage, right? So this is like a really core metric for folks to understand.
So this can help anyone, whether they're an athlete or you don't have to be an athlete to have this help you. Is that what you?
No.
Okay.
Now, I mean, Justin and I, we're not, we used to be athletes. We're not anymore. We're just business people, just, trying to just
doing
be
our
the
thing.
best version of ourselves. Yeah.
Justin, how do you leverage this data with, your clients?
A lot of it is on habit adoption. And really just as Kristen was talking about, where there's a lot of these items that in the other things that you were talking about, from Fitbit to Polar, Garmin, Apple, that you're just seeing bars, you're seeing colors, you're seeing these, okay, great, I woke up and I'm green, awesome. But what does that mean? And we really want to know the information behind it, because how else do we know what routines or what habits or what things we need to change? We don't. And to Kristen's point with HRV, where because of a dehydrated sleep, because of a fight the night before, because of a sickness coming on, because of a night of going out and partying or drinking, and the effect it has on us the next day, it's no longer subjective. It's no longer, we can put a metric to it. We can put a data point to it. And when that happens, it all of a sudden is a mind-body connection that doesn't exist otherwise. And that mind-body connection is so important. It's so powerful because we only make decisions as humans for two reasons. One, to get us further away from pain, and two, to get us closer to pleasure. And the moment that we are able to attach a mind-body connection through massive emotion, it's going to change our action. And so all of a sudden, if we know we have a fight with our significant other, we can thus do something for ourselves, be it be more mindful. Maybe it's we have to meditate after. Maybe it's that we have to allow ourselves to do something that's going to increase that parasympathetic nervous system in us to relax before we go to bed in order to optimize our sleep. So when we wake up in the morning, we aren't going to have that decreased HRV. We aren't going to have that suppressed immune system. We aren't going to be more susceptible to items that otherwise we wouldn't know. And this is the intricate parts of our bodies that nobody understands and nobody's really looking at. But the power in that is so massive and exciting. I mean, I just get excited talking about it, but that is the power behind it. And that is why this tool is so unique and so different and so incredibly valuable on so many different levels.
And I think from what you're saying is, I mean, I know so many people who don't sleep well because of stress. And now during COVID, you know, there's so much more stress, right? So wearables like Whoop can be so much more valuable. Maybe that's some of the things that have driven the valuation and the funding. And so it's actually, COVID has enhanced health tech devices like Whoop. Is that right, Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole, I think people are realizing, I mean, COVID really shoved it in everyone's faces that, you know, if you're not thinking about your health and wellness, like you're going to get sick and you're going to get potentially deadly sick, you know? So I think it definitely, and I think folks are saying, oh gosh, I actually really need to pay attention to how my body is responding and reacting to my environment and to the stuff I'm putting into it. And so, yeah, I definitely think that COVID has kind of pushed to the forefront of folks' consciousness, this concept that, hey, I need to be really in tune with my body and need to figure out my health. I think the second piece to that, which was really interesting and a lot to Justin's point, we did an analysis of all of the Whoop members, because all the research that, for, just the general population was pointing that COVID was having a real significant, bad effect on people's mental health and physical health and sleep, to all your points, James, about, these are really tough times. We did an analysis of all of our members, 3 months pre-quarantine, 3 months post, and our members actually slept better. They got fitter. So when you look at it from a cardiovascular standpoint, they made improvements. So I think, again, to Justin's point, when shit hits the fan and things change and they're not good, when you have insights into how your body is doing, you can course correct so much faster, right? So it's not 3 months down the track, you realize, oh God, I gained 15 pounds and I'm sleeping like crap and I feel really stressed. You're like, okay, 4 or 5 days go by and you realize, wow, my heart rate variability is really suppressed, or my Whoop recovery is really suppressed below my baseline. I notice I'm not sleeping very well. All right, let me take some stock in my behaviors. Let me take some stock in my environment. What is actually going on? And it enables you, empowers you to ask better questions. A lot of folks, I think are at first glance maybe scared of that type of insight. But if you want to, live long and be healthy and have the capacity to be present for the people that you love, these are things you need to pay attention to, right? And there's no reason to go around not knowing how your body is adapting to the world, right? Because there's science that can tell us that. And that's really what Whoop has figured out. And I think, it's important to call out that I think a big differentiator is the insights that we deliver. I think there's nothing on the market, and I am inside everything that comes out. I can tell you that I know every product that exists, like down to the little nitty gritty, and none nudges behavior. in the way that Whoop does. So there's something really elegant about the design, the display of the information, the voice of Whoop, which basically, kind of helps you understand how your behaviors are contributing either positively or negatively to the data. That's
Right.
another piece, right? Is like, what is that actual link? When I do, I get a notification. When I feel in control, my recovery is 28% higher than when I indicate I don't feel in control.
Got it.
Being in control is one of the most important psychological needs we have as human beings, right? So these are things that you can track in the Whoop journal, and then we basically provide these correlations on, once you have enough data for us to say something meaningful about those behaviors.
Let me ask a question that was posed here. What's the difference between Whoop and something like Halo?
That's a good. Justin, do you want to take that?
So the biggest difference within Whoop is, well, one, you have to understand that Whoop being privately owned versus being owned by Amazon, there's a big difference. I'm not sure I want a lot of my data going to someplace like Amazon. But the other aspect is within Whoop, there's a specific metric. And Jenkins, I'm going to go back to your question from above of, is there really anything that recommends it? That's kind of where I come in terms of where I take it a step further sometimes often is diving deeper into, it was that fight with the spouse, or it was something else. But what Whoop does is it brings that awareness to it right away. Whoop itself being a unit isn't going to know that there was the fight with the spouse, or isn't going to know that your nutrition was poor or that your hydration was poor. But knowing the signs and symptoms of the data that you're getting back is going to be the high quality area that is there. Going to the aspect of Whoop versus Halo again is, Kristen already talked about it. The power of Whoop is that it isn't anything else. It is just a Whoop. and that's a part of the marketing strategy. I think Kristen can talk to it, is because this is all it does is gather data that can help change your life. And I say all with capital letters and quotations, all it does, because that's powerful. That's extremely powerful. And that's why you're able to pull so much valuable, accurate data. One of the big things that I did coming up before kind of utilizing this was, I had a Whoop band, I had a Polar watch, I had a heart rate strap, I had an Oura ring, I had 5 or 6 other wearables that I wore continuously. I looked like a walking technology piece, and compared all of the datas. And the most consistent, the most reliable, the most subjective, because I know my body pretty well. And the data that gave me the most precise information based off how I was feeling and how I expected myself to feel, hands down was Whoop. Hands down. And that was, it just showed and proved the power of when you are focused on one area of something, how much further and how much more impactful it can be.
Well, I think that's really insightful, Justin. But Kristen, tell us, so it seems as though, the strategy, I don't know what the strategy is for Whoop, but it seems like everyone is a potential customer, right? Because everyone could leverage this data, right? Or these analytics. But is the focus right now to do a core, focus on athletes or high performing individuals, and then go wider? Is there, I'm sure there's insights here. I don't want you to spill the beans, but tell us a little bit more about how Whoop envisions growth.
Yeah. Well, right now we have, hundreds of thousands of members, right? And really just the very tip of that membership is, your tactical athletes, your professional athletes. So really most of our consumer base is just folks like us, who are, just professionals walking around, living our life. So, so that's definitely, I think the target market, and we're doing, we're doing a lot of research. So what I do specifically at Whoop is I kind of stand up the thought leadership and the research side. So, we're doing, I think to understand performance, like you look at the tip of the spear, the highest performers, right? What are they doing? How are they responding and adapting? And you look at disease, right? And what does that look in terms of response and adaptation? And then you kind of find, then you get to the middle, right? And you can really understand the spectrum of kind of health and wellness, right? So, I think we're looking at everyone on that spectrum. And I think, again, these core metrics are just, important for any human to be paying attention to. I think we could talk, all day long about sleep, but it's the insufficient sleep is the root cause to all mortality. Right. So let's be really clear, right? It's the root cause to cardiovascular disease, to psychiatric issues, to, metabolic diseases. Like it's the most important behavioral experience we have as human beings, without a doubt. Right. So if you don't understand your sleep architecture, like your Alzheimer's, right? Like we're talking about neurodegenerative diseases, the root cause is insufficient sleep. I think we can probably say that now. So I think for a product like Whoop, it just gives you visibility into the quality of your sleep. The other piece to that is consistency, which we've actually found is pretty much the keys to like overall health and wellness and resilience, because it's kind of sets the tone for your internal clocks. So I could go on and on about kind of the biological underpinnings of that. I won't, but I will tell you, stabilizing when you go to bed and when you wake up is probably one of the most important things that you can do for the biological system, and how that influences your physiology and your overall wellness. So sleep consistency, stabilizing that as a behavior is really important, and that drives how much time you're spending in deeper stages of sleep, which right. is a metric that or insight that Whoop will give you. So understanding your sleep architecture is just so fundamental, right? So yeah, I just think understanding like how critical these behaviors are, and then being able to get inside and see actually how you're doing it, then where you need to apply effort, right? Like we don't have unlimited time, right? In our lives. So we don't want to be flinging ourselves in all sorts of directions trying to figure out what behaviors are really important. But if I know that, wow, there's a direct correlation between sleep consistency and longevity, well, maybe I'm going to focus on that behavior, right? And I'm going to build a system to enable that. And that's really what this technology enables.
Absolutely. One quick question, and then you have to run. Someone mentions meditation. Is Whoop considering an integration with a mindfulness company like Headspace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I cannot wait for this. We are, I don't know if you guys know Dr. Andrew Huberman, but he's like a famous neuroscientist, like just unbelievable. And Dr. David Spiegel, who's a famous psychiatrist out of Stanford. We're doing a huge study with them right now. And we actually have learned some insights about the difference between breath work and meditation. I cannot reveal it yet, but we know which one is better and influences sleep more. So there's actually like quite a big effect size between these two interventions. So the short answer is we'll be able to drive some prescriptions inside the app in terms of what you can do in order to enhance your sleep. So we've been able to see which kind of breath work versus meditation, I'm not going to give away which one it is, enhances the sleep the most. So we'll be able to drive some prescriptions. And I think the goal would be to layer in some content inside the app. But I think, and that might be in the form of an integration with a Calm or a Headspace, for example, being able to point you to kind of certain types of modalities or techniques that they have baked inside their app that we know is backed by actual science. And a lot of these apps, to be clear, there isn't a lot of research or there isn't a lot of, when it comes to meditation, mindfulness, there's not a lot of really good studies, frankly, because it's all subjective, right? This is the first one where there's actual physiological data helping us understand, the relationship between these, techniques that are happening during the day and our sleep architecture at night. So yeah, I do think in the future integration, long story short, we'll do some sort of integration, hopefully. But I think first step is actually understanding how you need to best apply your time. And I think that's to me, I think a huge scientific contribution that we're going to make in the very short term.
Kristen, thank you so much. I know you have to jump, so we really appreciate your time. And we look forward to checking in with you in a year or two when it's a even huger company and success story.
James and Justin, it was so good to see you.
So great to see you too, Kristen.
Thank you so much for having me on. I hope I didn't get too sciencey there. So
no, that's great. We'll have to
clean it up for me, Justin.
I will. We'll have to connect offline here.
Okay. Bye, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. So Justin, tell us, I know there's a bunch of questions here that you're seeing too. One is, you might have some insight here. Has Whoop conducted any studies across different types of elite athletes, comparing the strain they endure? For example, strongmen versus CrossFitters. Any thoughts on that?
So the answer is no. And the reason being is, when you're looking at strain is based off of, like Kristen said, cardiovascular strain on the body. So a CrossFitter is going to have a larger cardiovascular strain than a strongman because it's more muscular strain than endurance cardiovascular that a CrossFitter is going to endure. Yes, they're both working with weight. Yes, they're both working in movement and power and different metabolic practices. But it's because it's simply driven based around heart rate, you're going to have a higher heart rate in that CrossFitter than you are in that strongman. And so it doesn't actually take into account the full body load that's going off. And the really thing is nothing that's heart rate driven is really going to be able to take a look into the muscular, tendon, structural effects of strain that's going on in a vast way. The only way we could really take a look at what that question was asking, different types of strain, is through Whoop. There's definitely, I know for a fact, there's a group called CrossFitters. And so you can take a look at their average strains, their typical strains for different WODs, thing that they've been going through. And then same thing for strongmen. You can take a look at the difference in strain there. But comparative in nature, not really, because again, what they're going through is two very individualized aspects.
Got it. So talk to us, Justin, about how you're leveraging Whoop. Now you have a lot of experience with athletes and just normal people, right? So tell us some anecdotes or how it's been working with folks you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. I'll give two separate examples, one on the elite athlete side and one on more of our executive CEO athletes on the side, if you will. So in that elite athlete side, just like Kristen said, the biggest thing that we start to find is, how do we become that 24-hour athlete? And the biggest thing we start to see is sleep and recovery in the benefit of performance. And so one of our athletes was complaining about continual low energy day after day after day after day. And their strength coach, their team staff was saying, hey, you know what, try this supplement, try this intervention, try this practice. Well, nothing seemed to work. When all of a sudden we started to take a look at the collective data, and we started to see that the light sleep was actually taking up about 75% of the night, where REM and slow wave sleep, which is actually the regenerative, the restorative sleep, was only 25%. And so to have an idea of what the number should be, there should be about a 50-50 split at best. We go through 90-minute cycles every single night. 90-minute cycles from the beginning of falling asleep right through light sleep, into slow wave sleep, into REM sleep. And so those take 90 minutes to get through. Well, if that cycle is broken at any point, you start back at the beginning at light sleep. So you never actually get into that true restorative sleep at night, which causes that continual groggy effect, the chronic illness, the long-term health effects that Kristen was talking about, not to mention acutely having low energies. And so all of a sudden, when we start to see this, it led me to ask the questions of, hey, what is your sleep routine like? What's your morning routine like? What's your sleep environment like? How are you preparing to go to bed? And he looked at me like I had four eyes. He goes, I don't know. I've never even thought about it. I mean, so his dog was coming in the bed at night. He would watch TV and fall asleep on the couch and then go upstairs. He would be sleeping on the plane and then wake up and have to go into the hotel. So all of these things were creating this very tough sleep routine for him that wasn't actually creating sleep routine. And in doing that, all of a sudden we were able to interject and create a sleep routine habit for game days, practice days, days he was at home, days he was on the road. And all of a sudden his energy levels started to skyrocket. And as a subsequent effect, his immunity levels went up. He didn't get sick as often. His mood changed. He felt he was performing better. He was more clear. He was more efficient. He was more productive. All of those byproducts that ultimately at the end of the day we're looking for. But you need some type of catalyst, some type of data-driven effect to make that change. And so that's more on the elite athlete side. From the CEO, executive athlete side, if you will, that we're working with. There was and this goes back to what Jenkin was talking about. And in Whoop, there's really no prescription, but in terms of what we've been doing, we take everything from a very unique, personalized aspect and then create the solutions off of the data from the DNA and epigenetic testing we utilize, as well as then Whoop as our standard for recovery and sleep. And so from us, you will get continual updates, continual changes, things that we can continue to add, change, and make impact for. But this individual was coming and saying, you know what, Justin, over the last year, I've been sick about 7 or 8 times. And I don't know what's causing these effects in me. And so obviously got his DNA data done, saw that he had an affinity for a lowered immune system, an increased affinity for flus and colds and viruses. So we already knew that that was an effect. He had a decrease. He had, we saw that from a genetic standpoint, selenium was something that he was prone to be deficient in and could see a benefit from supplementing it. So we took him off the multivitamin he was on because everything else genetically he was fine for, not predisposed to anything. We added one thing, and that was selenium. Selenium was the one thing that we added. Well, all of a sudden, we took a look at his heart rate, resting heart rate, and HRV data. And we saw that over the course of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, his HRV would steadily go down. His resting heart rate would steadily go up. This individual was in the financial space. Well, we started to realize that we asked, what were your habits like? Well, every night I'm going out, I'm drinking, I'm socializing with people, getting home late at night, and having to get a lot of paperwork done, sent off to those people that I needed, looking at the markets, getting up again early, and would repeat that over and over. Well, what would happen is the alcohol every single night causes a decrease in that resting heart rate, in that HRV. The stress of having to go about and socialize continued to be something that was a problem, as well as the routine that was not routine and was so scattered in when he was going to bed, when he was waking up, became an issue as well, to cause that steady downtrend over the week. And then the weekends, it would kind of come back up again. Same thing from a resting heart rate, because that is a direct autonomic nervous system response to stress and strain. And so when we started to look at this, we started to make immediate changes. Okay, what if we were able to structure all of our social nights on 2 nights a week instead of all 5? He goes, yeah, I could do that. So we chose 2 nights. And on those 2 nights that we did that, we also moved the work that he had to do to the other 2 nights. So it freed up the time for him to go to bed at the same time every single night. We created some type of systematic routine that he could ultimately utilize to be the same. And then by doing that repetitively, took HRV and heart rate, dropped the resting heart rate, increased the HRV, and all of a sudden, from getting sick 7 to 8 times a year, was sick once. And so every single day that he was sick for, it cost him about $100K. So over the course of these 7 to 8 sicknesses, you go to 2 to 3 days for each one, you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million over the course of the year that he's now saving just because of a habit change. And that is the power of information and how we utilize it in a very effective way to create systematic change in our routines and our habits in the way that we operate, but would only happen by having the knowledge to what the information was being presented.
Well, those are great examples. Share with us just one thing that everyone, whether they're an athlete or a business person or a professional or a student, what should we know about our health?
I mean, it goes right back to what Kristen said, and the number one thing that we need to be tracking and being aware of is our sleep habits. Sleep is the number one thing that is an indicator of longevity. It's the indicator of performance. It's the indicator of readiness. It's the indicator of chronic versus acute sickness, illness. And so if the one thing that we can take away is that we can focus and create a night routine of within 30 minutes going to bed at the same time, within 30 minutes waking up at the same time, and setting that biological clock so that immediately we can start waking up without an alarm clock. We can start waking up, getting out of bed rather than feeling like we're being forced out of bed. Hop out of bed with vibrant vitality and boundless energy rather than having to order a crane to pull us out of bed in the morning. And so tracking your sleep and being able to set a routine that works for you and nobody else but you, and sitting yourself on a nighttime routine. It doesn't start in the morning, it starts the night before. And so if we can say our goal is to be at bed at 10 o'clock every single night, let's set a routine that leads us up to being successful with that. And the biggest thing I can say is it's called the 3-2-1 rule. And the 3-2-1 rule is 3 hours before that bedtime, we don't take in any more food. Water, no problem, but no more food 3 hours before we go to bed. So if we set that bedtime at 10 o'clock, no food after 7 p.m. The 2 is no more work or stimulating activity 2 hours before we go to bed. So if that's schoolwork, if that's work, it's 8 o'clock, the work goes away. And 1 hour before we go to bed, no more screen time, no more blue light emissions. So no TV, no tablet, no phone, no laptop, no iPad, anything like that. And what that does is that allows, again, that parasympathetic nervous system start to set in and allows us to settle into that rest and digest standpoint. And people often say to me, well, what are we going to do if we're not watching TV or texting or doing something like that? What do I do for that last hour? Well, that's where we start to optimize. We do our hygienic things, we brush our teeth, we shower, but we meditate, we do some breath work, we read, we journal, we have a discussion with our significant other, but we start powering down. And so all of a sudden when we get into bed, it becomes this time that we've now prepared for sleep. It's something that we take for granted quite often, is we do not actually prepare for the number one thing that creates health and longevity within us.
I think that's great. And the best thing about that is it's all free, right? We don't need to pay anything to get on a proper schedule.
Yeah.
So I think everyone can implement those right away. Talk to us more about your primary focus of helping athletes and professionals, be more healthy and be more effective day to day. And then I want you to talk to us about the new program you're launching.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, James, it goes right back to Jenkins' question at the top, where he was really asking about how these technology pieces can help. Do they make recommendations? And that's the tough part. The answer is always going to be no, because the technology will never be able to be in your life. We'll never be able to take a look at what's gone on and actually transpose the recommendation into it and say, yeah, this is why it's here. And so what we've done with our company, teamed up with Whoop, is been able to provide coaching that helps create that for you, helps take a look at and bring the awareness to the routines that you're in, the exercise that you're doing, the diet, supplementation, life things that just happen, and how they're actually affecting you, and teaching you based upon the data that we see from, and again, we take a couple extra steps utilizing DNA and epigenetical testing, like I mentioned, but taking the data day to day from Whoop and saying, okay, this is what HRV really means. And so taking these real life examples from you, what it looks like in being able to integrate it into your life day to day, so that you now know when you see that decrease in HRV, that's what that means. I get it. I understand what HRV means. I understand where that could have, that fight I had with my spouse the night before had an effect, where my dog being sick could have added that extra stress to me, where that night out added that added stress to my autonomic nervous system, or all of these things that that come into play. And so that's what we bring to the table. That is what we use and help the thousands in which we work with to really become focused and aware of the changes that are actually going on and how they can make change like that. It's no longer what the gurus say. We say you play your game, not the guru's game, because you'll always hear, oh, have this morning shake or do this routine, but that's probably what worked for them. But we want to know what works for you. We want to know what changes are going to work for Tom, for James, for Harry, for Sally, for Kristen, for Justin, for Elise, because that's what matters. Is it's your game, not everybody else's. And so that's the integration that we start to utilize, and utilize it as a tool that can not only help provide the value to create habit change and adoption, but what it means for you in that long-term health and longevity.
And I think with COVID now, so many people are realizing, how important their health is, right? Even though they're under great stress, even though, it's really a crazy, crazy time, they realize that they have to spend the time, in getting healthier, right? And now is a time to sort of step back and, and really make the effort to do that. And so that leads me to the other program that you're launching, which I think is so novel and so creative, because it helps not only you, but your partner. So talk to us about this new program you're launching.
Yeah, it's just like you said, it is, as much as it becomes about you, it becomes about the environment in which you live in. And quite often, whether it's a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a husband, a wife, a spouse, significant other, a best friend, a roommate, everybody has an effect there. Everybody has a way they need to communicate. Everybody has a way they need to get clear on what they want to do and how they want to create change, and really what that looks like. And so on December 1st, we're launching a free masterclass for 6 days, an hour every single day over 3 weeks, that will really help people get clear on what they're wanting to accomplish, how they need to accomplish it, what that routine looks like, create the routines and the action steps, and then give them the ability to communicate that with that other person. So that's really unique in its facet as well.
That's awesome. I think it's going to be a great success, and really help people in a big way, right? So what else can you tell us, Justin, before we go? And then I'm going to take if you have a poem, we're going to read that out. What else do you want to talk about as far as in the health tech space and wearables? Now, you've analyzed all these wearables, you know everything that's going on in this sector. Besides Whoop, which seems amazing, is there anything else? So say someone already has a watch, or a Fitbit, or how can they sort of maximize the information? Because I think a lot of times people just wear them and then there's fatigue.
Yeah, totally. And so I think the biggest thing is that everything comes in trends, right? Where we focus on something because it excites us. We focus on something because it's new or it's fancy today. But anytime that you're thinking about diving into this wearable space, think about something that is actually going to create change within you. Think about something that's actually going to be able to create habit adoption, create something that you're going to be able to utilize long term that gives you some type of tangible result. We, as humans, we're so quick to love flashing lights and colors, but instead really understanding the deep nitty-gritties of why something matters. And if we have a real true understanding of why it matters, it doesn't matter what the look is or what the use is, but that the end result is going to be tangible for us and it's going to get us closer to where we want to be. And for the vast majority of us, we want to live longer, we want to live happier, we want to live healthier. And by doing that, let's make sure what we're doing is helping that, not just, again, some number, some color, or some sound that reminds us to do X, Y, or Z, but creates a tangible change, and we can know why it's happening at the exact purpose.
Great. All right. Do you have a poem for us?
I do.
All right.
It's one
this out.
It's one that means a lot to me. A lot of people will understand it. Probably heard about it, but it's called Footprints. And one night a man had a dream, and he dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flanked scenes from his life. For each scene, footprints along, and in each scene, he saw two pairs of footprints in the sand. In the last scene, it flattened out, and there was only one pair of footprints in the sand. He noticed that many of times through his path of life that had become difficult, he only saw one set of footprints. This really bothered him. And he said, Lord, you said that you would always follow. If I followed you, you would always walk beside me. You would always have my hand and you would always have my back. But when I walked in the darkest times, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why when I needed you the most, you were never there. And the Lord replied, my precious, precious child, I love you and I will never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you only saw one set of footprints, that was when I carried you. And so I love that because I love it so much. I got it tattooed on my chest. Means a lot to me. And it's a great reminder that no matter what your faith, no matter what you believe, you're never alone. And you've always got somebody else watching over you.
I love that. Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.